in most cities, potato starch is easier to find than katakuriko, than the Warabi Mochi powder. What we're going to be using today is something called Katakuriko. Katakuriko is potato starch, but it's so it works similar to cornstarch. Excuse me, similar to cornstarch, but has a different kind of gelling profile than cornstarch does, and is something that gets used not only in savory dishes to thicken up things like sauces, but it's also something that's made that's used in the summertime to make stuff like Mizu Manju. And so it's kind of like, it's, you know how like in the States, cornstarch is like super, like the thing that you keep in your pantry all the time. Well, katakuriko or potato starch is the same thing, but in Japan. So before we start making our manju shell, we're gonna start prepping the inside, which is the red bean paste. Now, red bean paste is something that, yes, if you're a super foodie, I guess you could make it from scratch, but if you're cooking it for yourself and you're at home, then you can just buy the pre-made stuff. And the pre-made bags of red bean paste is supposed to be a base. So you can thin it out to make mochi soups, which is very popular around the new year because it's warm. Or you can do what we're doing here and actually dry it out a little bit so that we can form it into balls to put it inside our manju. So what you usually do is you just put a little bit of the red bean paste, the pre-made red bean paste, into a bowl and just pop it into the microwave for 30 seconds, like 2 times. Like you don't want to do it too much. Like if you do it 3 or 4 times, then it'll get too dry. It'll be really hard and it's not very palatable that way. So in my case, 2 times at 30 seconds seems to be the right amount of time. And what you do is you just take the size of the ball that you want and just kind of form it between your palms. And you'll be able to tell if this isn't the right humidity level, because if it's too wet, like right out of the bag, you won't be able to form these balls. It'll just end up looking like a big mud pie in your hands. You'll get red bean paste all over your hands and it just won't be pretty. And if it's too dry, then it just kind of crumbles in your hands. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. It should still be, you know, pliable, but when you roll it in your hands, it keeps your hands relatively clean. And then you can kind of make sure that they're all around the same size. Today, I'm going to make 5 of these little ones. And this is what I mean about like, it's meant to be made when you're at home and eaten kind of straight away after it's done, is because it's one of those things that like if you leave it out in the heat, then it melts. And if you put it in the freezer, then the texture gets all weird. So, excuse me. But the nice thing about like those pre-made pastes is that you don't have to make a large amount, you know, all at once and then be stuck with this like large vat of red bean paste. You can just kind of heat it up as you go or as you need. Okay, so once you have the centers ready to go, we'll put that aside for now. And we're going to make our shell. Now, for most things, they're manju based. A lot of manju is kind of yeast based, kind of like a donut with red bean paste on the inside. This is more like a gel. So, first thing we do is we make sure everything is within arm's reach. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of this katakuriko, this potato starch. And this recipe really makes a small amount, which is perfect for like, you know, making the snack for like yourself and one other person. It's like one of those summer snacks that my mom used to make when I was a kid. So 2 tablespoons of potato starch and 1 tablespoon of sugar. You don't really want to make the shell too sweet because that red bean paste is already sweetened. And to that, we're going to add 200 cc's or 200 milliliters, because cc's and milliliters are the same, of just regular plain water. Kind of like a medium heat. You want to make sure that the potato starch and all that is mixed up while the water is still cool. If you add it once the water starts boiling, then it just gets lumpy, and nobody likes that. So, okay, so the interesting thing about this is that the minute it starts to heat up, it will start to coagulate. And the minute it coagulates, it starts making this gel. So you can kind of see how it's going just by how the consistency changes in the frying pan. You don't want to make it too hot, but kind of speed it along a little bit by making it more like a medium high heat. Then the minute you start seeing it start to gel up, I turn the heat off. And then I'll turn it right back on just at the end, just to kind of, again, dry it out just a little bit. Obviously, if you're making this for a crowd, I wouldn't make this for a huge crowd because I don't think it keeps very well. You kind of have to eat it right away. So if you have, you know, a tea party or you have a bunch of people over that, I don't know, less than 10 people, I think is a good number if you're going to be making this as like a surprise snack. And obviously, if you are the adventurous type, which I am not, you can try making this in the microwave rather than like having it over the stove. But I think, ooh, see, it's starting to gel up. I think it's better on the stove, is what I was getting at. So I have tried making this using the wooden spoon. I don't recommend it because I think the gel gets absorbed into the wood a little bit too much. I just turn the heat off. There's that residual heat. See how that gets all translucent and gooey and kind of looks like library paste. If you're old enough to remember library paste. And then the key to working with this is you want to work with it while it's still warm. If it cools down, it gets really kind of weird and separates when you're trying to make these layers. So I like to leave heat on just a little bit and leave on low, just to kind of keep the heat on. Okay. Move all of this out of the way. And what we're going to do is move these into these little dishes. I know it's a big muffin pan, it's like a mini muffin pan, but we're only making 5, so. And then the best thing to do is also keep a little bit of water close by for your spoons so that it doesn't stick. I forgot about that. So 1 spoonful each. Now you can use like a giant muffin pan, but I don't know. I think these Japanese sweets are supposed to be a little on the delicate side, so smaller, I think, is the way to go here. Oops, to do one more. And then before it cools off, I'm gonna put these red bean paste balls right inside. And so what you're making is like a really pretty translucent shell. And then you're just going to cover them up with another spoonful. And this is kind of why you have to do this while it's warm, because the top layer and the bottom layer will separate, which is not pretty at all. Let the layers cool off. And I think that's probably also why the recipe, I've looked for this recipe on a couple of different websites, as well as, some older books that my mom had. And they all kind of had the recipe kind of being like a small portion. And I think that is because of this heat thing. Like you have to try to make this in a giant batch. I think that it would just cool off too soon. And so that is our Mizu Manju. And you can already tell that it's starting to get translucent. Like this is right out of the, this is the one that's right out of the frying pan, and this is the one that was the first one that I made. And you can tell that that's already starting to get translucent. This gets popped into the fridge for about an hour, and that's all it is. So we're gonna do that, but in the meantime, I'm gonna make Warabi Mochi as well. And I'm only going to be making one this time. And I'll go ahead and turn this off. And we're just going to use the residual Mizu Manju wrapping. And we're going to put it into a plastic container. Only because we want it to kind of just, have something for it to set up in. Okay, so this goes in the fridge for about an hour, and I will be back and I'll get all this cleaned up and get some really pretty plates out, and I will show you what it looks like when we try to present it, and then you get to watch me eat it. I'll see you in a bit.
And we're back. It's been like an hour since I put those Mizu Manju and my little tray of Warabi Mochi in the fridge, and it's set up beautifully. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like when I try to plate it and then do a little taste test. So if you have any problem getting this out of the muffin tray, then just add some water. Like literally just pour water all over this because it's solidified on the outside. So if you add a little bit of water, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of scoop right on out of there. And there you go. I think I put that little red bean paste just a little bit too much on too close to the top. So let me see if I can pull out another one. Oh yeah. Okay, so these came out beautifully. Put it right on this little bamboo plate here. Put this other one over here too. And then with the Warabi Mochi, what you do is you just cut it into squares. Right in the container, right? easier if I set it down. And then, once you cut it into bite-sized pieces, you're going to put that into your dish. These like lightly sweetened mochi pieces that are absolutely clear. And then to that, we're going to add Kinako. Now, Kinako comes in a bag. You can buy it in most Asian markets. In Korean, I think it's called injolmi. I'll have to figure out what it's actually called and actually like maybe put it up here. But Kinako is a roasted soybean powder. If you don't have a Japanese or Asian market in your neck of the woods, but you have like I think probably Target sells it, is peanut butter powder is a really, really good substitute for Kinako. And because it's a powdered, kind of nutty flavored flavoring. So add a little bit of sugar, just regular plain old white sugar, like we used earlier when we were making the manju, because Kinako does not come sweetened. And then you just kind of mix that all together. Kind of like if you were like making cinnamon sugar, you know. And if you're not really somebody who likes peanut powder or Kinako, or you're allergic to peanut products, I don't know if you'd be allergic to roasted soybeans, but if you are allergic to soy as well, you could probably just do like cinnamon sugar. I think that might be a really fun little, not quite traditional in flavor, but you'd still be able to enjoy it with the Wabi Mochi. Okay, so you're gonna add that, and then kind of lightly toss it together. And then a little bit of extra bonus is this stuff called Kuromitsu, which is literally translated into black syrup, but it's a brown sugar syrup that's kind of like this, got this caramely, slightly salty, amazing flavor that I love. It's such a great substitution for like any kind of like syrups that you want to like pour on top. It's a little heavy if you want to use it as a substitute for maple syrup, but if you can find it, I know you can get it on Amazon, but if you can find it at your local market, get a bottle. It's not that expensive. I think this bottle is like $3 or $4, and it lasts quite a long time. So this gets poured right on top. And that is our super quick summer Mizu Manju and Warabi Mochi. The easiest way to serve this is right on a plate with a Japanese bamboo fork, which is not like a chopstick, but it is something that gets used all the time for Japanese, specifically Japanese sweets. And you can buy these at most Asian markets. Again, it comes in my case, it came in like a pack of 100 or 50 or something like that. And as you can tell, it's a little fork with a handle, and it's got 2 prongs, and you can use it to have your dessert. So I'm gonna go ahead and try the Warabi Mochi first. It's so good, and it's so soft and cold, and it reminds me of home, and it's so tasty. Goes really great with some green tea. Oh, and you can also like decorate if you want to get super fancy, you can take a little bit of edible gold powder. Not gold powder, don't go to like your local craft shop and just get some gold paint. This is edible gold powder. On a little paintbrush, and just kind of tap it to add just a little tiny bit of like extra glam to make it look super fancy. Gold powder doesn't really have a flavor, it just makes it look cool. So, but then you can bring this up here. I'm gonna cut this in half. And you can see how there's the red bean paste inside the mochi. And it's a little gooey. But you can get it all on one forkful. So good. It's such a different experience than having like regular rice mochi. It's perfect for summer. My favorite is this Warabi Mochi, mostly because I love Kinako powder. And that Kuromitsu, that black syrup, has that little bit of that salty aspect to it, so it's not quite so like annoying, cloyingly sweet. It's so good. I hope, as always, that you have an amazing rest of your week. I am going to keep eating these. I hope you give these a shot. And stay cool out there. Even though the sun is out, it's still really, really warm. I'll see you guys next week, and I hope you have an amazing weekend.